All right, everybody. Hello, this is Craftblend again with another book review. I'm Heather and this is Daniel. And today we are going to be talking about Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. So I think that the first thing that we'll do is go ahead and tell everybody what the book is about. So Daniel, do you want to tell us what the book is about?
Yes, it's about a creator and his creation. It starts us off in a boat where Dr. Frankenstein is recalling us, not recalling, but telling a story about his creations and his downfall. And then we get to learn throughout what happens with him and his creation, a self reflection of himself.
Okay, so on to
That's a no spoiler
yeah.
synopsis.
So in that case, then we'll do a quick rating. So I gave it a 3. What did you rate it?
I I gave it, I think, a 4.5, 4, like really solid.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think I gave it like a 3, 3.5. It was right in the middle there for me between a 4 and a 3. Okay, so all right, so some of the key characters in the book, right, are Victor himself, who created the monster. Then you have Frankenstein's monster. I don't think he's ever named, right? He's just the monster.
Yeah. Does not have a name.
Then we also have Elizabeth, who is Victor's wife. And then we have Victor's little brother at the beginning, I think he was, right?
Yes.
And then his friend Henry, which I think are probably the most important characters of the book. Um, so how did you feel about the characters? Did they feel real to you? Were they likable? What did you think about all of the characters? And
I really enjoyed the characters and the mix of them. And I like the duality between Frankenstein and his monster. To me, what would be like my favorite character would be the monster himself. Dr. Frankenstein, I'm like, girl, you created this. Like, why are you bitching? And why are you like scared of it? Like, I couldn't understand some of like the stupidities of Dr. Frankenstein himself.
right. Yeah, I think I would agree with you as well. I think the likable character at all was really just the monster because you kind of get to see like his beginning, right? His hopefulness that maybe Frankenstein will give him a partner, but then also his anger, what comes from that, and the shame that he feels. So he's probably definitely the most dynamic character in the whole book. And then of course, you have Victor himself, yeah, who's just very like you tend to like almost see him as selfish, right? A little like self-absorbed and focused just on what he wants and what he needs. And then, that makes him essentially, almost the antagonist of the story, right? He's technically the bad guy because of what ends up happening and what he causes to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Which you could take multiple readings into it itself. It could be with like creator versus creation. So it could be like metaphoric with like a human being and God, or so, like that aspect. It could be a queer aspect as well, queer coded with you and your other self and that part of your life that you put in the closet or put aside. There's it's never explicit to a meaning. It morphs to what you kind of want it to be
Okay.
as a reader, and I really kind of dug that like a lot with those. The true horror is the ones that hold a mirror to you or a mirror to reality. So like at least with that, Mr. you know Dr. Frankenstein and the creation, it's like those multiple readings are valid.
Right. Was there anything that you particularly liked about the book, other than what you just said, or is
Well, I guess one of the biggest like epiphanies, not epiphanies, but maybe you can help me find the right word, is when it's expectations versus reality. Because Frankenstein itself is a pop culture icon. Now, pre this, I've never seen any of the films, believe it or not, and until still till this day I haven't seen. Which now I'm dying to see them. But I know of Frankenstein with Universal's Frankenstein monster and all of that. So I know the green makeup and the little bolts, and then also the monsters. The 1950s, 1960s. Frankenstein has been ingrained. So while reading it, having those different expectations, I'm like, oh, Frankenstein is not, well, at least the monster is not dumb or bumbling, like how they have portrayed him in multiple media. He's like very intelligent. He's like learning. He's like, and then some of his monologues, I'm like, bitch, get that Oscar. Like, just the way he talks and the way he's like, you created me and you shun me and you don't, value me. And he talks back. He has agency. So it's like, ooh, I dig this. So it was just that expectations blowing me away, especially that it's a classic. It's like a classic that some people, I never studied it in school, but I've always wanted to at least read it. Like with Dracula, we haven't done yet, but which I'm dying to do as well. But like, it's just those expectations. It's just, I really dug it for a classic. It didn't even feel like a classic. It felt like teleported
Yeah.
for at least me.
No, I agree. I think that definitely the way that media portrays Frankenstein's monsters, you almost get a sense that he's just, brainless, kind of just like been morphed into this kind of like half alive thing, only to find in the story he's actually much more developed than that. He is created in man's image, and especially mentally, right? Like he is a person with thoughts and feelings, and he ends up learning and all that stuff. So I mean, I can agree with that. Um that's why it's interesting to me that the focus is on seems to be on Victor himself, when the reality is that like the monster
Yeah.
is so important to the whole story. Um let's see. I think that I agree with that being something that I really liked about the book, that it was just interesting to see the monster kind of like have to come to his own defense when he wasn't even asked to be here, right? I think that's a general feeling. I think most people, we can feel, right? We can relate to that as people. Like, I didn't ask to be here, and yet I'm here. I'm trying to like navigate all of this, and you're not helping me, right? Like some of us can relate to that in terms of like familial bonds or things like that. But then also, I think I really like the idea of the creator, and I think I had mentioned this in a text to you, but I really liked the idea, and this was just something that I felt could be taken from it, but the idea of creation, like the creator, and how Frankenstein grew to dislike the monster, right? He grew to feel disgusted by him, but he created him, right? And I think that really spoke to me in a religious aspect. And the funny part about that is that it's not even so much God himself or like anything like that that doesn't like people who are queer or trans or anything like that, right? But people themselves don't like these people that are out here living their lives, that are just being true to themselves. But if the Lord created them, right, then he created them the way they were supposed to be. And if this is how they feel, then why is that wrong, right? Where is your disgust coming from? And it's the same thing with Frankenstein. This goes back to what you're saying, that maybe, like being able to see kind of like a queer coded situation. That's how I took it myself. I found it interesting that like and not just queer people, right? Not just anybody who is queer, but just people who are different, right? Like,
Yeah.
we're here, but we're not doing what people deem to be the normal thing we should be doing. And so you're either shunned, you're outcasted, you're viewed as this other that doesn't, like, we don't want you around. But if you think about it, like I said, in that biblical sense, we were created that way, right? Like, this is who we are. This is how we have been navigating the world, as just us. So I really liked being able to take that from the story and kind of being able to feel how would I put it? Being able to almost put myself in the monster shoes more than anybody else. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. It was the first, like, even with being like traditionally a Halloween story or read during the months of October and being a fall read and, mostly being associated with Halloween and the Halloween spirit and all of that.
Yeah, because
It's
it's
just,
like a gothic tale. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So it's kind of cool to see that it's like, you know, he's not a villain. He's not like you could totally relate with a lot of the aspects he has. And to me, the most villainous would be Victor
Right.
himself, the
Yeah.
actual fucking scientist.
Which is
It's,
why I found it odd that they label him as the protagonist, but he's the one telling the story. But to me, he doesn't feel like the protagonist. He feels like the bad guy. Like you made this thing and then you're upset at how it acts, and then now like you're the reason that all of these things have happened. You know what I mean? And you're not being able to own up to that, right? Like that's just it's very real and it's very interesting to kind of like it's two interesting characters. They're very well done. Mary Shelley did a great job kind of like putting these two different beings together and being able to highlight their similarities and differences. I thought that
yeah.
she did it
And
well.
then also having the, like, even though I don't want to spoil, but it'll be nice just to at least say that aspect is when there's a character shift. There
Mhm.
are moments we are the monster and we're getting it told by the monster's point of view.
Yeah.
There's parts in the book, in the story, that it's through the monster's point of view. And I think that's what helps it tremendously into sympathizing with the monster.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, she like subverts tropes and stuff like that. It's like so it's super cool. I really dug it.
Yeah, she does definitely it definitely helps to have like that added element of his point of view, because if we just had Victor's, we might not connect with the monster so much.
Exactly. Yeah, because I did not expect that.
Mhm.
In books, I fucking love when we have a main character for like 70% and it does like a character swap that I hate to say it turns me on because like sometimes I could be immature and find it, but it like excites me and like I'm like I get all like like
I
I'm like I love it. I
I
love it
know,
when they
yeah,
do that.
like I agree. I like character switches, even if it's like one chapter, one character, one chapter, the other, or just switches.
Exactly, dual protagonists and all
Yeah,
that. I
it's
love
fun
that.
to have a switch, yeah, for sure.
I live
Um,
for that.
was there anything that you disliked about the book or felt that could have been improved?
Uh, Basically, it's the the doctor himself. I feel like at least his journey was just sad. But then again, it could be a lesson learned about creator and subject and all of that, and just being narcissistic because he comes off very narcissistic, especially when it comes to aspects of looks and everything. Because Frankenstein is like different parts of different things. So, and how he always describes it as ugly. So it's like, um, I I wish it had like a clearer defining moment for Dr. Frankenstein, but at the same time, it works. So it's not like no, it's hard to say negative about it. There's not that many because it's short enough where it doesn't overstay its welcome. That's one positive. Another positive is just giving us the monster's point of view. Like I really can't say anything negative. Like all the characters serve their purpose. Like it's hard for me to find a negative other than like the repetition of Dr. Frankenstein never truly understanding his monster and never, but that goes to making sense of the downfall of the doctor.
Right.
Yeah. But then I just didn't want anyone to like get hurt or whatever. But at the same time, like, you know what? Just kill the world. Let the world burn.
Yeah. So for me, I really just found the writing itself to be a little tedious. I didn't so much struggle with understanding it. I just struggled with wanting to pay attention to it. So that was probably anything that I didn't particularly like. But at the end of the day, I also know that it's just a different era, a different way of viewing, and a different way of writing than we have now. I'm definitely more modern when it comes to my writing style. So for me, the excessive wordage and excessive
Yeah, you have to be in the mood for
yeah,
it. That is understandable. The
it
mindset of it.
takes me a long time to be pulled in when the language is so just extra, I feel, but then again, like I said, it's just the time, like I don't really, there's nothing really you can do about it. Anybody at that time would be reading books in that way. So that was just a part of it that was a slog for me. But aside from that, yeah, I agree. There's not much to dislike about the story other than the fact that Victor just never really comes face to face with his own monster of himself. He never really learned that
Exactly.
he is also the monster. So I think that's a really cool way of ending it, because sometimes like it's hard for us to see what we do and how it affects other people. And
Exactly.
sometimes we turn a blind eye to it and we just ignore the fact that we are doing these things. And it's important. I think what the book really helps you with is to self-reflect. And I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Um, so in that vein, how did the book make you feel? How did just in general, how did it make you feel? Did you um was there anything?
Mostly overtly surprised,
Okay.
just because I'm like, damn, I would have loved this in school. Like, I would have loved to learn this at school. And then I just really, really, really dug it. It got me into the Halloween vibe too, with the gothicness of it. But then also, it's like, how there's other subgenres within horror, and then I don't like to, like, sometimes diss horror fans or anything, because this all comes with love and stuff like that. But I think everybody likes different types of things. Like when you like romances, you like enemies to lover, you like, friends to lover, slow burn, fast burn, smut, all of those within the subgenre of romance. So with at least Frankenstein, to me, it's like it's that term is usually negative, the elevated horror that makes you think, horror that's like a reflection of humanity, horror that's, it's really derogatory, the form of the word that could say. What I used to say instead of elevated horror is, I used to say, like, just like horror aspects with a twist to the, to a thoughtful horror. But that could also be like construed as in, like, what, slashers are stupid. But that's what I don't mean. I don't mean that at all. I just, sometimes I like my stories to have somewhat of, a realism to it, a reflection to it, because there's a time and place for everything. Because I also love my slashers, during that month I read a bunch of slashers as well, and I dug them too. And, but my biggest surprise was how beautiful and intellectual Frankenstein was, even within its gothic themes. And
Right.
now I need to see the movie outcomes and stuff like that, because now I'm like, that's not my Frankenstein. Like, that's not. I want my Frankenstein to be intelligent, to be like always learning. To me, he feels like what would be the modern rendition of like a computer getting smarter.
Okay, yeah.
He feels kind of like that would be like a modern interpretation, like something you create, like an AI that comes back to you. Frankenstein feels like that, but within the context of like the past, because it's with electricity that he creates it and all. You know, I dig it, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I truly loved about the. It's just the surprise of it all and the way I enjoyed it.
No, yeah, for sure. I think that it definitely is different from what you'd expect. I think that when you think about Frankenstein in pop culture, it's definitely more horror, more just like your general, killing spree kind of stuff. Well, then you read the book and it's a little more philosophical, a little bit more
Philosophical,
like
psychological, all those
Black
things. Yeah.
Mirror-esque.
I know now we use Black Mirror for everything. Even in my reviews, I use that. It's like, what did I? Well, Twilight Zone, I used to say instead of Black Mirror.
It definitely those type of books, I think that one of my favorite authors that does that is Shirley Jackson, where it's just basically painting a picture of society.
Yes, like The Haunting of Hill House. That was another book I read at the same month, and I was so surprised how much I freaking loved it, and the themes of like suicide, and that one also is very queer coded with the two women in it. So
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah, I
mm.
personally really dig Shirley Jackson, and I really prefer her writing style. But I won't take away from Mary Shelley's ability to really tell a good story. I mean, it was a good story in general. So which leads us to our last question. Would you recommend this book? I personally would. If you really want to read,
Yes, highly recommend.
if you want to read the classics, if you want to see Frankenstein's monster for what he really was, as outside of the films and pop culture, and just, you know, kind of like if you like those kinds of stories, like you were saying, that kind of hold a mirror to society and yourself, it definitely is a book that I would recommend. Now, if you have a hard time with like heavy language and like really how would I put it, really elaborate sentences, you're gonna probably find it difficult to read, because I personally did, but that would be like my only negative. Aside from that,
Mhm.
it's a pretty decent story and it's interesting. How did you
Yeah.
how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I would totally highly recommend it. And even for those who like, to me it's a short read. It's under 300, I think, or a little bit slightly over 300. So like, it's short. And then if you do have difficulties with reading, never let anybody shame you with the stupidity of like, reading books is actually reading them. No audiobooks, no, you know, like that ableist language. Don't let people read how you read. It doesn't matter what other people say. Enjoy life, get to enjoy things. So fuck everybody else. But yeah, I would highly recommend it if you need any help, like with audiobooks, or you need, or read it in slower sessions, do it. But I do highly recommend it, especially in a like in a academic setting too. Like I would have loved this to read in high school or whatever, like because we never got to this one, especially during the spooky season. We all want that. And then over analyze it with the lines, and then have teachers tell you like, oh, like they did with Oedipus Rex and like the Odyssey. And I could see that happening with this work as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. I agree with that. I also agree with.
And it's also one of our first few female authors within the context of the being the classics,
Right. Right.
you
Right.
know. Yeah, because it's usually men. So it's nice to have, one, because we're always with George Orwell and all of those that we read in school. This is Mary Shelley. It's a female. So it's like it's within the canon of our literature that it's important to diverse our reading.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is currently taught in high schools and stuff like that. I know that some people were reading it in my high school, but I particularly know I didn't read it in school, so I get that.
Yeah, I didn't. I was like, I would
But
have
yeah,
loved to read this.
but yeah, I also agree with your whole topic on audiobooks. Audiobooks have saved my life with this book, because I was having an issue just sitting down to read it. It was hard to get into it mentally, like to put myself there. But when I was able to do that with audiobooks. So it definitely saved me
Yeah.
mental energy to just have someone read it to me while I
Yeah,
was.
you have to be in the mood. With classics, I have to be like alone. I have to be like either in my house.
With a
Yeah, I have to.
pen
Yeah, I have to concentrate,
and
and then sometimes,
candlelight.
yeah, exactly. And sometimes with classics, I have to reread the same paragraph. Sometimes I'll be like, wait, because sometimes the sentence structure could be slightly off because we don't speak like that anymore. So
Exactly.
like, but it's still worth reading regardless.
You'll definitely get a lot of new words to put in your vocabulary.
Exactly.
But all right, you guys. Well, that was it for us for Frankenstein. This is a little bit short for us because I think we were supposed to do this last year, but we did it this year, and we probably forgot some important stuff. But either way, we really enjoyed it. We really recommend it, and yeah, we're excited to see if you read it, what you feel about it. Let us know in the comments, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.